All right, we're back with dealing with acute illnesses and colds, flus, respiratory infections, any kind of infection anywhere in the body, and learning how to handle that. But particularly, we're talking about in this short series, we're talking about acute illnesses. And in principle number 1, we talked about what your diet should look like. If you really want to be able to handle acute illnesses, your diet has to meet a certain standard. If it fails to, then so will you also fail to handle those illnesses. And just recently, I had a person come into my practice who was a fairly healthy guy, I thought, but he'd gotten pretty sick, and with a respiratory thing, and he came in, and I worked on him, and he felt better, and I gave him a supplement that should have helped, and it kind of overwhelmed him, and I thought that was odd. But it's a supplement that occasionally people don't tolerate well. So I thought maybe he just doesn't tolerate this supplement well. Didn't think too much about it. But then a few days later, he came back again, and he was kind of worse again. And I thought, oh, that's very strange. Generally, when I work on people, I get the kidneys working really well. I get their lymph draining. I get their nervous system reset. I do some digestive work, and they just get better from there on out. Maybe not immediately, but steadily better. They're not going to have a lot of regression. But he did. He went downhill, and I thought that was very odd. And I worked on him again, and it lifted him up a little bit. But then that evening, he's kind of getting chills, and I'm thinking, that's very strange. And it was my mistake, really, because I assumed, based on general questions that I'd ask him, that his diet was pretty good. And but those questions were not good enough. And that's a weak spot of mine. I sort of assume, after people have been around me for a while, heard me talk about a few things for a while, that they will just start making healthier choices. And certainly if I ask them, how are you doing on your diet, they're going to say to me, I'm doing good or not. And if they say they're doing good, I assume they will follow the basics that I gave you in the last video. Anyway, he didn't, started to get worse, and ended up going to the hospital. So he didn't stay in the hospital because basically he really wasn't sick enough to be in the hospital. He just was very, very uncomfortable. And that's not a good reason to be in the hospital. The fact that it scared him was not that big a deal. His life was not in danger, but he was feeling bad, and so he went, and they basically just sent him home. And they checked him out really good, but his oxygen was up, his blood numbers were good, it looked like he was okay, so they're like, you're not going to die, go home. And I applauded the hospital. I'm like, great, you could have admitted him and at least given him an IV of saline and charged him a couple $1,000, but they didn't. They just sent him home. That was the honest thing to do. And I was pretty impressed with that. Anyway, but that was because he didn't have the background in place. So, but today what we want to do is talk about frontline defense. So I have a website, and I'll try to get it posted down here. I don't upload videos to YouTube often enough to really be able to make sure that I know what I'm doing. But I do have a website called soundmountainhealing.com. And on that website, what you're going to find is a lot of resources for free. You can just look at them and scan through them. Now, I have things for sale. I have supplements for sale on the website, and a few hardware items as well. But most of what's there is free, and it's information. And so you can find, if you go to the search bar and you type in a search for ginger enema, yes, enema, which reminds me of a joke, but I don't have time to tell it, so I'll have to wait on the joke. But it will tell you all about what I'm going to describe now, which is getting your bowels moving. And so I'm going to let you go there and read those instructions. What you're looking for is the immune system, part 2, how to get your bowels moving, or get your bowels moving. And I don't have it in front of me, but that's close enough that you'll know the one you're supposed to look at when you get there. And so bottom line is this. Nobody is really sick if their lymph is draining fast, because fast draining lymph oxygenates kills the infection forthwith, right? And post haste, and it helps keep cleaning out. It keeps cleaning out the cytokines. So when you feel really bad, what you've got are inflammatory molecules, mostly cytokines, in your tissues that are just sitting there. And it creates this inflammation. Maybe it's in your sinuses or your lungs or joints, or you get that achy feeling. And man, you just feel terrible, end of the world. You're going to sit at home, feel bad, go to bed. Well, the only thing you really need to do is get the lymph draining really, really well. And as soon as you do, the cytokines start dropping in the tissues, and then you feel fine. Maybe not fine. You can still tell that you're not 100%, but you're going to feel pretty good. I'm totally not trying to ride on anyone else's coattails. In fact, I don't like that. I want you to take me for who I am and learn what I have to share with you. But probably if you followed Wim Hof, W-I-M-H-O-F, Wim Hof, if you follow Wim Hof, you've seen maybe where they injected him with the endotoxins from a bacterial infection, and he did his breathing thing and got rid of all the endotoxins in minutes. Right? And then they're like, well, maybe you're an alien, right? And then he had these Polish disciples of his come in, and they could all do it too. And they're like, well, I guess he's not an alien, right? So there's a lot of cool stuff about Wim Hof breathing, and I'm not going to try to steal his thunder. Go listen to him, right? He's the expert. But I guarantee you, one of the things about Wim Hof breathing is rapid moving lymph, because your diaphragm and ribs, as you breathe, pumps lymph. And rapid moving, well oxygenated lymph detoxes your body, gets rid of cytokines, helps your body do stuff efficiently, not painfully, not miserably. So all you really got to do, if you want all the symptoms to go away from an illness, is get the lymph to drain really, really well. Now, there are lots of ways to do that, but there's one thing that is most important above everything else, and that is your bowels have to move really, really good, really thoroughly. You need to empty the bowels completely. And so I have the instructions on my website. Go there, read that. Don't expect me to give you the instructions here, because there are details I want you to read over. Make sure you read it 2-3 times, get it just right. I don't want to tell you it and have you miss something. Okay? Read it, and do it. It's all free. Or I mean, you need a few things, but they're inexpensive things, and go to it. If those bowels move completely, all the lymph in your body will drain in seconds. And we've had, I don't know, in 20 years, I bet we've had hundreds of cases that have had their fever completely gotten rid of. All the fever, chills, feeling terrible, completely gone in 20 minutes after doing an enema. Every once in a while, it takes a little longer. It depends on a lot of factors. Okay. Now, so the enema is step 1 in the principle of getting your lymph moving. Step 2, obviously, you're not going to eat certain things. Now, if you listen to part 1, principle 1, you know generally what your diet should be like. Here's something a little more specific. Dairy products, wheat products, animal products in general, but especially dairy, but also meat and that kind of thing, that all leaves this residue in your system that slows lymphatic drainage down. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that if you're sick, you live on like broth and juice, and herbal tea and fruit, right? That's the way to eat when you're sick. Or don't eat. Don't eat. Don't eat is not a great option if you're emaciated and thin and weak. But for most of us Americans, and frankly, I've traveled through Europe, both Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and everybody I saw there was also excess. None of them were really deficient. People get deficient in a different way. The digestion stops working and they get blood deficient and they don't feel good. But everybody I saw looked pretty pretty much excess. They had plenty of heat. They had plenty of ability to live life. They weren't fainting. They weren't falling over. They were pretty functional. So I would say in general, everybody can just go without food or just on herbal teas, especially raspberry leaf tea, super helpful. And they can just kind of do this during the time that they're sick, and or just have fruit or fruit and broth, and just wait until they're well before they start throwing things in there congesting. Like a simple thing, because that congestion is going to make it hard for even an enema to clean you out completely. All right, next point, dry skin brushing. Wonderful thing to do for yourself. I've heard a lot of people talk about rebounding. I'm not that big a fan of rebounding. I bought a trampoline, tried it. I took the Applied Lymphology course. I use principles from the Applied Lymphology course. I teach principles from the Applied Lymphology course. I love Dr. West and what he did. I've had conversations with his son. I think he's awesome. I think what they're doing is awesome. But the rebounder trampoline did not impress me, for whatever that's worth. I couldn't get the kind of results I'm looking for in my clinic with that, period. So I don't use it. I don't recommend it. Breathing, like Wim Hof, that I recommend. Okay, or any kind of deep breathing. Get that body moving, man. Get it moving. And then, so dry skin brushing, breathing, massage is fabulous. Now, if you go in for a massage and you're sick, first of all, you should, in this day and age, I personally have a lot of different opinions about this that are practical rather than insane. But in this day and age, just to be politically correct, you probably should disclose to your massage therapist, hey, I'm sick, right? But I would love to come in and get some work. And maybe if you've already had what's going around, or if you just don't care, or if you think getting it over with is a good idea, I'm sick, would love to get some work. Go in, very light work, not deep work. You wouldn't want deep work when you're sick. You don't want to overload the elimination systems of the body with toxic debris from deep in the tissues. You just want to get fluid moving really, really well. So it's going to be a light massage. It's going to be a little faster tempo, not a lot of depth, over the whole body several times, and absolutely that's going to move your lymph. So meditation. It's amazing how meditating on chakras or meridians, tracing meridians that run through your body, can get lymph moving immediately. It's amazing. In fact, I'm going to tell you one quick story. I'm over time, but I'm going to tell you a quick story. I have a person in my life who has trouble sleeping, and she'll forget what to do and talk to me, and I remind her, do the kidney meridian, and I will have her start at the foot, at the kidney meridian, and she needs to trace it in her mind and feel it on her body, the energy flow through that kidney meridian. And she follows it, from the little toe, deep inside, and then it emerges on the skin at bubbling well and comes up around the malleolus and on up. And there's a whole bunch of discussion about, those meridians going the other direction and things like that. None of that matters. Just start at the foot, work your way up toward the bottom of the pelvis. Literally, and this is someone who's tried all kinds of things, cannot go to sleep. She has never, ever made it past the ankle without being asleep. That's how powerful meridian meditation is. Amazing, right? So, and there are other reasons that works for sleep, but I don't know why I'm throwing that in. Maybe it'll be useful to somebody, but it's awesome. But you really have to feel it. You really have to be 100% right there, getting that energy moving, and it'll start moving, and some other things happen, and poof, you're out. So, great thing to do. That kind of thing people forget to do when they're sick. I'm too miserable to meditate. Well, what are you going to do? Stay miserable? How about you don't? How about you get good instead of miserable? And so I'm a big advocate of that. So there's moving lymph, and that's principle number 2.